It's hello from me.
And it's hello from me.
Today, we're going to look in and around Russell Square in Bloomsbury in central London. Now, the great thing about London is that even in less well-known places, you can find things to see and you can learn some very interesting stories.
Russell Square has been here since the very early 19th century, and it was designed by the famous landscape gardener Humphrey Repton as a private garden for the residents who lived around here. And in fact, most of the squares like this were private gardens originally, although in the 1860s, Russell Square did something pioneering. They allowed working class and poor people to come in and show flowers that they'd grown. Something really incredible, caused a lot of controversy, but I'm really pleased to say that they started something new. But it still wasn't until many, many years later that these places opened up as, in effect, mini parks, genuine spaces for the public. The publisher Faber and Faber used to be at number 24 Russell Square, and here's a brown plaque, unusually a brown plaque rather than a blue one, for the poet T.S. Eliot, who worked here as a literary director and editor. And he was a hugely important poet, and I guess nowadays he's mostly remembered as the person who wrote the poems that the musical Cats is based on. Just outside one of the entrances here, I like how people are repurposing the red telephone boxes since they've gone out of use. This one's a little cafe, and there's another one over in Southampton Row that's become a tiny shop for selling woolen things. The painter Sir Thomas Lawrence had his studio over in this direction at number 67, but that was demolished when they built the original Imperial Hotel. Also, some literary connections. John Wyndham's Day of the Triffids gives a mention to Russell Square, and so too does Thackeray's Vanity Fair. If you're a fan of the Benedict Cumberbatch version of Sherlock, the TV series, you might remember that Russell Square is where we first meet Martin Freeman's Dr. Watson. But actually, there's another TV connection, probably my favourite. Black Books, I think, is one of the great British sitcoms of all time. Dylan Moran, Bill Bailey, Tamsin Greig, they have their shop just off Russell Square, although actually the exterior was filmed just a few streets away from here in Lee Street.
Now, we all know about black taxi cabs, but before then you had hansom cabs which were pulled by horses, and cab drivers were not legally allowed to leave their cabs. So from 1875 onwards, 61 of these little green huts were built where cab drivers could go and get food or non-alcoholic drink or shelter from bad weather, but they weren't allowed to gamble or swear. I don't know who is watching them. But there's only 13 of them left now, so see if you can spot them when you're going about London. A short walk away is the back entrance to the British Museum. Now, usually this is the quickest and easiest way to get into the museum because of all the big queues at the front. But unfortunately today, it's probably the worst way to get in.
On the eastern side of Russell Square, with this very, very impressive building from the end of the 19th century. This is the Kimpton Fitzroy Hotel, which used to be known as the Russell, and the restaurant inside is supposed to have been the inspiration for the first class restaurant in the Titanic. If there's an excuse for me to talk about the Beatles, I'll always take it. This is the President Hotel, and in 1963, when they were starting to come down to London regularly on their way to becoming the most famous people in the world, this is where they stayed. Hotel President then was a 5-star hotel with a bath and a television in every room, which was a world away from the homes that some of them had when they grew up. Now, you'd think the people here would all love to have the Beatles staying in their hotel. We'd be very pleased to welcome them. But actually, the hotel manager one day got very, very upset with them because one day they came down for breakfast and they weren't wearing a tie. Can you imagine that? Terrible, as if the long hair wasn't bad enough. Behind me is Russell Square Tube Station, which opened in 1906 and was designed by Leslie Green with this beautiful oxblood red terracotta. It was one of 40 stations that he designed in total. So if you've been to, for example, Chalk Farm or Covent Garden, Oxford Circus or Mornington Crescent, probably this building looks a little bit familiar to you already. But it's not just the outside of the building that's impressive. When this station and other stations on the Piccadilly line were first opened, about 20% of the population of London couldn't read or write. So how did they know how to get off at their station? Well, what they did, quite simple but quite brilliant I think as well. The design of the patterns was different, so the tiles, the colours were in different formations. And that's how they knew. And it's worked really well. Okay then, right, let's go back and see if we can find Andy, who is standing in front of the horse hospital.
So this is an independent arts venue, and for many years I was wondering why it had such a strange name. But it turns out it actually was a horse hospital back in the early 18th century, 19th century. If a cab driver had a sick horse, they'd bring him here.
I really like this tile on the side of the horse hospital. It commemorates the London Olympics, and at the bottom it says press button to teleport in minutes. I would definitely love to go back to London 2012. Fantastic time.
There's been a pub here since 1797, and it used to be called the Handsome Carriage. But also, Phil, there are lots of famous writers that used to drink here as well, right?
That's right, that's absolutely true. One of them was someone who we mentioned earlier, T.S. Eliot. Another one was Charles Dickens, who used to live over in that direction in Doughty Street in a house which is now his museum. And a third one we should mention as well is Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes.
And Phil, according to the sign we saw, William Pitt the Younger used to drink here. Now, he was a very famous politician in the early 18th century.
Late
18th century, late 18th century, early 19th century, and he was given alcohol from being a baby because of pleurisy. Given alcohol as a baby, so by the time he was 12 years old, he was an alcoholic. And then people said because he drank so much, by the age of 24, he became Prime Minister. Okay, Phil, ready?
Ready.
It's to William Pitt the Younger. Cheers, Phil.
Cheers.
Oh, not yet. Cheers. Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.